Warning: the views and beliefs in the following program does not reflect the views of Boom Broadcasting. We give full creative control to our creators and do not believe in cancel culture. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey there, I'm Michael Davis. I'm obviously the man behind the mic today. And if you've seen my other content, I usually talk about sports, I usually talk about wrestling. Today is not one of those days. This episode is directly towards life, to where I'm very vulnerable and authentic with you guys. And if you know me, like that's usually how I live my life. But this is obviously the one I enjoy doing, but I don't enjoy doing, especially with today's topic. 7 years I spent my life just engulfed with my work, where I also lived, and it had its highs, it had its lows, and this was the first year since 2017 I did not stay there. And this is about my former workplace called camp. So I wanted to preface this conversation of I don't intend to badmouth anyone. I overall really, really, really loved my time there. And looking back from now to when I first started, where I almost actually quit before my first summer, before kids actually got there, I am a completely different person for the better. Uh, so this conversation, I'm going to be real of what it was like this summer. I'm going to give like brief highlights throughout those 7 years because I don't want to go on for an hour. I will be celebrating a successful first month of Boom Broadcast, and I'll be celebrating a successful uh, birthday month. So this is my birthday month, and after events that happened last year, I want to make sure I'm enjoying myself. So immediately following this, I'm going to be going to a concert with one of my buddies. So I'm super excited about that. But camp, if you have never been to a summer camp, I don't know how to explain it to you. I had a guest appearance earlier this year on Isaac's podcast. If you guys are familiar with Isaac and what he's doing an entire Pan American handle. I probably butchered that. I'm so sorry, Isaac. But he's doing this trip and he is interviewing people he's met along the way. It's a really good podcast. But one of his first stops was to visit camp. He saw me. He came on to my podcast over there, and we clicked. And he's like, "Hey, would you be willing to return the favor?" I'm like, "Absolutely." So we really dived into the impact of what camp was for us because when I was there, my first summer, so was Isaac. And lo and behold, I spent 7 years of my life there. And I feel like every summer was different. And I feel like every summer I grew as a person one way or another. So before I even got to camp, there was this friend who was like, "Hey, they need more counselors, need more male counselors. It's a Christian camp." So I was like, "Okay, I've never been to a camp." I'm like, "Where is it?" And he told me. I was like, "There's no way. There was nothing right there." Well, lo and behold, it was in my hometown, and I was like blown away when I saw the place. It's a fantastic facility. Well, we fished, we hiked up this hiking trail called the Overlook, and it was steep. I was an inside kid spending all my time on video games, on the computer. I mean, I did it all. And so stepping outside for a second, I was like, there's no way, but this is so much fun. I have to get back. And I applied, got it, and they're like, "Hey, the staff training is this week." And I was like, "That's not gonna work because I am on vacation." And my parents had specifically planned this vacation because I was getting older, my brother was getting older. This could have been the last family vacation we had together in the place we always visit and go vacation at. Well, with that being said, I was like between a hard rock and a hard place. Like I felt like I really needed to do the staff training because I'd never been to a camp before. They encouraged it. I didn't want to wait till next year because I was like, there is a specific reason why I am here. And I chose a staff training and was not received well. And then a few weeks later, I'm walking out of church and I get a text on my phone or an email saying that staff training was pushed back a week. And so I chose staff training, but with this email, I was able to do both the family vacation and the staff training. Well, when I got staff training, everyone was crazy. Everyone was super different. Everyone's super high energy. I'm just like standing around in the corner, and I almost quit before kids got there. And I remember sitting outside the cabin one day, and it was a rough week. Like somebody I look up to, somebody I admire, somebody I was close with at church, his wife had passed away. I was in a very, very new environment, doing very new things, and I was scared. I was scared that I wasn't going to have what it takes, and I was like, "This is just totally outside my comfort zone." I almost quit. Well, I'm sitting outside the cabin one day, and I'm like, "You know what, God?" I'm praying, "God, you have me here for a reason. Just do it." And that night was when everything changed. And that year, I actually got to let someone find their faith, and discover their faith in Christianity and Jesus. And I was like, "Whoa, this is what it feels like." Like I didn't have to spend thousands of dollars to go on a mission trip for a week. I mean, I got to share Jesus with somebody there. I got to see that transformation, and in addition, like, I got paid for it. It wasn't much. It wasn't much at all. When you, like, break down hourly rates, they try to throw the, "Oh, you get free housing. Oh, you get free, food." It's still, like, pennies that you're getting paid per hour and doing some of the hardest work. Back then, they changed their salary now. They're actually one of the better paying jobs out there in the nation when it comes to, nonprofit camps. So, kudos to them for changing that because what I was making before was not sustainable, even before all the inflation that's happened. Well, my first summer, I think it's the best place on earth. I tear up on the very end of summer, which shout out to the people who just did it this year. I believe today is their last day. And if not, it's next week. Haven't kept up too much. I've been super busy, but I think it's one of these 2 weeks. I'll address you guys a little later on in this episode. So I was like, I was tearing up. I'm like, this is the best place on earth. I don't want to leave. And there was this lady who came by. Her name's Bridget. She's awesome. Uh, Curly blonde hair. And she's like, there's an option to stay. But I'm like, I know I got to go back to school. Fast forward a few years and COVID hits. And we actually run summer camp during the pandemic. So that was awesome. That was my fourth year. They started doing remote learning camps, and I approached the same lady and was like, "Hey, just wondering if you're hiring for." She's like, "Yes." And she like started running through all the things. I'm like, whoa, wait. Let me make sure I actually have my classes online next semester. I was finding out like a week or two after this conversation. And it worked out to where once the pandemic hit, all my classes remained online. And I ended up moving in. uh, I'm not considered full time at this point because of logistics or whatever. It's not a full time position. It's seasonal, but you're basically there full time, working full time hours. And so went there and lived there for 2.5 years. So I had 4 summers in cabin with kids and 3 summers on leadership, which is just an advanced role where I helped with the programming. I last summer started my own online 24/7 radio station for the kids. One of the craziest things, and I'll share more about that. There's so many camp stories that yeah, there's so many camp stories that could be its own standalone episode, and I'm excited to share those, but I wanted to share more about what it's been like the last year and a half, because it it's changed and it's different, and I'm not saying that's a good different, I'm not saying it's a bad different, it's just different. Everyone realizes that, everyone recognizes that, and especially me. Like, I'm not going to go into all the details of, if I think camp's well run. If you catch me, outside, if you catch me at Walmart, you know, then yeah, you can hear all that. But what I do want to say is something that had become a huge part of me, uh, and something I always felt was going to be there a year ago was not. And for several different reasons. Um, and it was definitely weird, because if you think back to when I first started camp and the culture shock there of actually arriving at camp and being like, this is something I'm not used to. And then you fast forward to next summer and you leave camp and it's like, well, now I'm back where I was 7 years ago. I'm out of my comfort zone. I don't know what life looks like outside of camp. I mean, that's a big jump. That's a big jump in 7 years. And I just have really, really fond memories. I have really good stories. People have asked me like, "Oh, would you have like done it differently?" I really wouldn't have, because I don't meet my best friend. I don't meet his family. I'm not standing up there when he gets married this past year. I I don't get to share my faith with, the kids. I don't get to see that transformation happen in one of my campers who just completed their first summer as a camp counselor. So it's kind of become full circle. I wouldn't have been able to, because before the pandemic hit, I was supposed to be going to an internship where I could do basically a radio station with kids in a hospital, and that would have been fantastic. And then the pandemic hit and everything shut down. They're like, "Okay, we can't, allow people in the hospital for obvious reasons." And so it was like, bummer. And then when, my best friend's like, "Hey, why don't you now you can come to camp?" And I'm like, it's way too late. Applications are probably closed, and ended up not being closed. So I was like, you know what? Why not? Got convinced to come back for the pandemic summer and gotten to see how much it impacted kids, just to have that interaction they hadn't had for like 3 or 4 months at that point. That was awesome to end up stepping into leadership roles where I could speak in front of counselors, where I could speak in front of campers, where I could speak in front of parents and effectively communicate what needed to be done, whether it was, hey, here's where you push your dishes, to, hey, here's what we're doing, to, hey, it's raining outside, we're going to play a game instead, and facilitating that. To, losing that opportunity in the summer of 2020 to being able to self-start a 24/7 online radio station that parents could listen to while their kids were away at camp, to where kids could do whatever they wanted to talk about. I mean, that was special, and that's a one-time thing. Nobody's going to be able to duplicate that. Nobody has duplicated that, because, I mean, it was my heart. It was everything was coming from my heart at that point. And with everything that happened last summer, and there was a management guy, let me tell you, he started like late January, early February, he was gone by October. And at that point, that was when and during that time frame, that's when I left. And it was like, okay, well, this is new, this is interesting, don't know how I feel about this. And then it became a journey. And so here's why I'm making this episode today, I cannot go forward with telling everything that happened last year at this time without saying I think it all started with camp. I mean, that is a long 24/6 job. You are putting in hours. Like, you are waking up really early in the morning. You are going to bed really late at night, and you're trying to show the kids that you have it all together. So it is physically taxing, it is mentally taxing, and it is not for the faint of heart. They deserve a lot more respect. Not entitlement, no entitlement, but they deserve a lot more respect. Um, from various different people, whether you drop your kid off at summer camp or whether you're working at summer camp in another administrative role or full-time role. I mean, these camp counselors bust their butts, and there is nothing but respect for the ones who actually care and for the ones who actually want to make an impact in a kid's life. I think that's totally commendable. With that said, I mean, it was a lot, and at the very end, I could feel, you know, my body breaking down. I ironically got COVID, at the very tail end of the summer. I thought I had an ear infection. They were like, "Oh, yeah, you got that, but you also have COVID." So it was about a week and a half of me just, "Oh, yeah, and I developed bronchitis on top of that." Fun. So that was a challenging week and a half of like, man, this is like the very tail end of summer, and I have to stay in my room. And one of my buddies would bring me trays back from the cafeteria. I'm like, thank you so much, but you can't get near me. Um, it was a wild time, and so by missing that week and a half, everybody's like, what happened to him? What? And then when they saw me come back for the last few days, they were like, I thought you were gone. And I'm like, nah, just had COVID. But knowing I only had a few more days left. And it was it was just this full circle moment of, wow, I I don't know if you guys can hear the phone ringing. I mean, they're probably calling me about this story. Um, the full circle moment of seeing the first kid you got to lead to his faith now become somebody who can step up now as a counselor. It's like, okay, I've done my job. I have done my job. To see all the staff that I knew and I looked up to coming in, for all them to leave, to my generation leaving, to honestly probably like the generation right below me leaving. It was like, okay, I mean, this is enough almost. I have done my part, and everything I did at the camp and everything I do now because of camp is with intentionality. That's where this idea came about for the man behind the mic. That is where all of this stuff came apart. Like, this is where my co-working job, like, I can be very intentional with anyone who ever walks in the door. My friendships, I hope you guys feel intention coming from me when I talk to you, when I reach out to you, when I talk on the phone, text, um, anything through my podcast. I want to be very intentional because working at the camp and seeing so many different people, so many different backgrounds, people need that. People need somebody who's going to be real, genuine, authentic with them and be like, hey, life sometimes sucks. It's not always going to go your way, but God's got you and it's going to work out. And a year ago, I didn't entirely know what was happening. I didn't know if it was all going to work out. I didn't know where my next steps were going to be. I ended up starting applying to various different places in various different states. And now, looking back a year from now, I can say it's all worked out. I'm healthy. I'm good. I'm living life. I'm loving life. And it wouldn't have happened if I was still at camp. I'm just going to be honest that staying in your comfort zone is not where you're going to grow. So just like going to camp back in 2017 was out of my comfort zone, if I would have tucked my tail between my legs and ran back, uh, I would have never grown. And at the very same point, if my camp tenure did not end last year at this time, I wouldn't have been pushed out of my comfort zone and I wouldn't have grown. And I can look back now over the last year and say, yeah, I've had a lot I've had a lot of stuff come through my way, and I'll get to more of that as the month goes on. But all in all, I'm good. I'm happy. I didn't feel like I could say that a year ago now. And honestly, I don't think I could have said that a year and a half ago with the place I was in. Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, was an aspect of that. But now it's like, okay, I'm good. I got it. I got it. And I just want to encourage you, if you guys are in a spot where you're like, hey, I can't see uh what's next for me and I'm scared to take that leap, but you feel that nudge like I did all last summer. I felt it all last summer. And I told somebody specifically, like, every time I heard you speak, you were like telling me to leave indirectly. And he's like, didn't know your situation, but okay, cool. That's crazy how it works. But every time I heard him speak, like, dang it, I need to do this, right? I need to. Um, and finally it was like, you know, when somebody has a door open in front of them, it's easy to walk through. But when the door closes on your hand, it's painful. I mean, have you ever had a car door, smash on your hand? A lot more when I was younger, to be honest. Um, Gosh, I feel like I ran my hand under cold water so many times as a kid. But I mean, it hurts. It's painful and doesn't feel great in the moment. And honestly, you may break a bone, depending on how heavy that car door is and where your hand gets placed, whatever. But the pain will go away and you'll grow. I stepping outside my comfort zone last August and not entirely knowing what was to come a few weeks later and then what my entire fall was going to look like was going to be tough. So I'm really, really grateful. But I just wanted to encourage the summer counselors who just endured a summer where they were, because it's a grind. Uh, Everyone that I personally know or everyone I've personally heard of did a good job with the things under their control. We're intentional with the kids, so keep that up if you decide to do that, or if you decide to take the intentionality somewhere else. And if you're like me, because there will be some of you there who are like, this was my last summer and I don't know where to go from here. I don't know what a big person job looks like. I don't know all this schematics. I don't know what it'll be like my first summer away. My first summer away allowed me to do stuff I've always been passionate about, and I couldn't have done boom broadcasting if I was still at camp. I can't run two 24/7 online platforms. I wouldn't be at the co-working facility I'm at now. I couldn't have hung out a lot of times. I honestly couldn't drink a beer. I mean, I'll just be honest. Uh, couldn't do the wrestling commentaries, couldn't do 99% of the stuff you saw me do this summer. And if you asked me what I would have rather done, it's no contest. As much as I loved camp when I was there, I feel like this is what I need to be doing right now. And so I just really want this to be an encouragement to those who are about to step away from that world, and let you know there is a world after that. And in a lot of ways, it might be better. And if it's not better, you can hopefully look back on camp like I do with fond memories of meeting your best friend, getting to be at his wedding, the impact you had on kids, the funny camping out stories, the funny pranking stories. There's so many things I can say about camp that I'll get to later episodes for the man behind the mic. What I do want to say is a year ago, a year ago, I didn't know who was going to walk into my life. I didn't know who was going to come and make a whole difference. Well, while this entire process was happening, and I was in the process of leaving camp and leaving that season in the past, I met somebody and I saw them on Twitter, and I was like, "Yo, your name's also Mike, and you have a wrestling podcast." And I was like, "That's pretty dope." And I think we connected late July. I still need to figure out if that's true or valid, but I'm like 99% sure that is. We met late July of last year, and I noticed last night after I got off the nightcap, I'm looking back, I'm like, we're pretty close to a year. And it was August 1st that we did our first collaboration together. It was his first video podcast. We might share it, who knows? And the reason I say that, it's not to promote a wrestling podcast, but a year ago, he was a rando who had the same name as me and also had a wrestling podcast. And fast forward a year, he is one of my best friends. He's a huge part of Boom Broadcasting, and I can call him up and be like, "Yo, I'm struggling," and he can talk me through it. And when I was going through my stuff last year, he only knew me for a few weeks, and he sent me a birthday gift, but he also checked in on me every day. I mean, every day of, "Hey, bud, how you doing? How are you feeling?" And that meant the world to me because camp's interesting. The hardest part about leaving camp is thinking your community leaves. And with living there, with working there for so long, and most of my friends coming from that place, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna lose 99% of my friends. May have lost 90. Who knows? I haven't done the math. But for somebody to show the same intentionality that I got from camp and do it from a place of I genuinely care about you was the best thing to happen to me. And I'm gonna be honest, with the stories I tell this month in August, you're gonna be like, man, Michael went through it last year. It was a terrible month, and I genuinely thought it was too. But there's always a bright moment, guys. I didn't think there was a bright moment of last August. I mean, all the things that were happening. And seeing last night that my first time collaborating with this Mike fellow with a wrestling podcast, it showed there are good things that still happen. You can always find the bright moments. And I have so much respect and love and admiration for Mike to stick with me and for some reason to continue whatever we were continuing. Um, he's the man, he's the GOAT. I appreciate him, and I'm so glad I can look back on August and be like, yeah, last year was challenging. But if nothing else, one good thing came out of it, and that was collaborating with Mike. And the second thing, if the tough stuff don't happen in August, I'm not where I'm at today. So this was a slightly longer episode of the man behind the mic. Sometimes we'll go 10 minutes, sometimes we'll go 30, just like we did today. I hope this is an encouragement to you, whether you're a summer camp counselor and about to venture out into new things, or you're just in a spot where I don't want to step out of my comfort zone. And I promise you, you're going to be met on the other side of that. Really, really pleased that you did. So, without further ado, I'm about to go celebrate. I'm about to go to a concert and rock on, party hard. When I say party hard, I'm just driving a couple hours away to go see a band that I was supposed to go see last year. And I'll explain why I didn't here on a future episode here very soon. But this has been the man behind the mic, and the man behind the mic is me.